Taoiseach, last October I stood in this very spot and raised issues about SiteServe and the water metering contract. As the months progressed, the questions extended into the wider issues surrounding IBRC and how they handle certain transactions, and ultimately into this dysfunctional relationship between IBRC and the Department of Finance. IBRC had one remit, and that was to ensure that the citizens got the maximum return possible for the €35 billion that they were forced to pump into primarily the failed Anglo-Irish Bank. We wanted assurances, for example, as to whether or not the $119 million they wrote off when SiteServe was sold to Dennis O'Brien was, in fact, the best decision for Irish citizens. Now, 5 months on, after the establishment of the Commission, we're at a stalemate. Ironically, the special liquidator, Kieran Wallace, the person who the department originally wanted to conduct the review into the SiteServe issues, is now claiming privilege and refusing to fully cooperate. And over the past 24 hours, the Public Interest Director of IBRC has taken to the airways to express concern about the injustice that was perpetrated on the board, or that will be perpetrated on the board of IBRC, and their reputations if the Commission collapses. But what about the injustice, Taoiseach, perpetrated against the Irish citizens in a situation where the public bailed this bank out, but the public can't know how the assets were disposed of? That's the real injustice in this, Taoiseach. It appears that the balance of law falls on protecting individuals rather than the common good. And how can that be right? And how can it even be constitutional? Was that even considered when the inquiry was set up? Minister Noonan can claim that his department has provided unredacted documents, but he's providing them inside a circle of confidentiality. If he's providing the documents but placing significant restrictions, how can he claim that he's fully cooperating? So my questions are, Taoiseach, can you confirm if any debtor involved in any of the case or any of the transactions has been threatening legal action if the Commission proceeds? Can you confirm if Minister Noonan is fully cooperating, in a way that will allow the findings to to have full public consumption? When did you first know of the problems with the Commission? Because there's apparently letters flying around for the last few months between the parties. There's been articles in newspapers by both Cliff Taylor and John Walsh. Alan Dukes has known about this since August. Does your department read these newspapers? Would that have come into a discussion in relation to? Would you have been kept in the loop, Taoiseach, on this? And when you say as soon as possible, what is your understanding, or what can you tell us what you mean as soon as possible? And finally, Taoiseach, the 2004 Act that allowed for the setting up of these inquiries replaced very time-consuming and expensive tribunals. But Taoiseach, would you agree with me that if you wanted to shut down debate on a particular topic, then the best way to do so would be to set up a commission of inquiry, because there's no PQs, no FOIs, no questions to you, no press inquiries, and unfortunately in this case we appear not even to have an inquiry.
Taoiseach. Thanks, Deputy Murphy. Well, you yourself were one of the principal public representatives who raised this issue, and you welcomed the debate and the establishment of the Commission of Investigation, and the government were happy in the circumstances to provide that. You did make the point in your observations that you were pleased that we were getting to the point where we're going to get that kind of information, albeit in a different way. So I'm quite sure everybody supports having a facility to have absolute transparency, accountability and all of that in the public interest. Minister Noonan is, of course, cooperating fully with the Commission of Investigation, and has been public about that in the sense that all of the available documentation was sent in unredacted fashion to the Commission of Inquiry. I can't communicate with Justice Quiggin to tell him when to send in his interim report. My understanding, Deputy Murphy, is that that can be finalised very soon. Now, I don't want to put a day on this, but I would hope in a relatively short time we can have the interim report. And if I were to say next week, I would hope that that could be so that we could have his authorisation to publish that, have it reflected on here in the Oireachtas, and get all your wisdoms about how to proceed here. Nobody, with one exception, I think, referred to the word confidentiality on the discussions that took place on the terms of reference for this. And nobody pointed out what you all now know to a great extent and are very knowledgeable about. This is the first time a judge has taken this particular view in respect of the Commission of Investigation Act of 2004. You asked me when would I find out about this? I've already put that on the record here. I received a letter from Judge Cregan on Friday the 6th of November. Now, the judge did make contact with officials from the Department of the Taoiseach as the receiving department and with officials from the Office of the Attorney General, and I asked that that would be presented in writing. He sent me in that letter on the 6th last Friday, and in that he pointed out the fact that a body of work had been done by the Commission of Investigation, talking to in respect of the special liquidators, and that he had received their assertion of confidentiality over all the documents that they'd submitted, that there was a similar claim of confidentiality and privilege made by the Department of Finance over some of the documentation received from it, and that the Commission was proposing to have a similar determination drafted as it did for the special liquidator. They're published on the website for your perusal now. He went on to say in his letter, which I'll publish later today, that the Commission is preparing an interim report under Section 34 of the Act prior to submitting the interim report to me. The relevant sections thereof to any person who is identified or identifiable from the draft report. He's got to have that under the normal circumstances. He did point out that the interim report will outline in detail the work of the Commission to date and will also deal with issues which have arisen. I would assume, Deputy Murphy, from that Justice Cregan, in the interests of being able to continue to conduct his business in a transparent, accountable fashion, would point out the recommendations as he would see appropriate for the Oireachtas or the legislature in whatever fashion to allow him to be able to continue to do that. I don't know of anybody in here who doesn't want that to happen as quickly and as effectively and speedily as possible. And believe me, government will respond. But in order to do that, we have to know what exactly it is that we have to do and the best way of going about that.
Deputy Murphy.
Taoiseach, yes, of course, I welcomed the establishment of the Commission, and I think we would have all expected that the legal issues would have been explored before it was set up. And will you confirm that the AG specifically said that there were no impediments to the Commission when it was established? Would this have even been considered, this particular aspect? Can you show goodwill, Taoiseach, in holding, or at least holding an aspect of that inquiry, particularly in relation to SiteServe, in terms of the response that will be forthcoming from you to the judge in question? I think we all know that Anglo-Irish Bank is no ordinary bank. The information we're told, is confidential to the borrowers. That's one of the impediments. So we all collectively pay off the debts of many of these borrowers, who then have their confidentiality protected. Taoiseach, do you see this as an issue of clear public interest? You know, is it an issue that the common good is the primary issue at stake? Will you, is that the way this has been approached?
Thank you.
And given that, and I know one of the things that's being discussed at the moment is, or I'm certainly hearing it, whether it's just Chinese whispers or whether it's real or not, I don't know, but that one of the responses could be that a tribunal of inquiry would be a consideration. And given that the same names crop up in the context of, for example, the Moriarty report, how would people have confidence in that kind of response? What kind of responses are you looking at in terms of how this inquiry can proceed without running into into the kind of legal impediments that are very clearly stalling or possibly collapsing this inquiry.
Taoiseach? Yeah. Well, I don't expect that the inquiry should collapse. Judge Cregan has pointed out in his determination the reasons for saying to me in a letter formally that he is unable to continue processing the case given the circumstances that now apply. So how can we make adjustments legislatively or in any other fashion to allow him to be able to continue to do that? So from that point of view, Justice Cregan has requested that he should wait until I receive the interim report. Obviously he's working on that. In the meantime, Attorney General's office are looking at a range of options that have been referred to in the determination of Justice Cregan, both in respect to the special liquidator and the documentation received from the Department of Finance. Now, as I said in answer to an earlier question, I don't think anybody wants to go the route of a tribunal of inquiry. We've had experience of these lasting 10 years, costing in excess of 100 million. The issue here, Deputy Murphy, which you raised yourself centrally, of course, and you're quite right to do so, and in order to do so, is to find out, in the public interest, was there favouritism, or was there any undue decisions taken not in the public interest in regard to any of these transactions where there was a write-off in excess of 10 million applied. My understanding is that there are 37 of cases there involving 200,000 pages of documentation, and the intention of the government in setting up the commission was to be able to get to the bottom of that. That if there is an issue there that needs to be addressed in a fair and accountable fashion, then so be it, that the Commission of Investigation will be able to do that. Justice Cregan has pointed out how in his decision and his judgment he's unable to go further. We, as the Oireachtas here, have a duty in the public interest and for public information to deal with that. But in order to be able to deal with it, I need to have Justice Cregan's interim report, and he has requested that we should wait until we receive that at Cancorla before proceeding. So from my point of view, as the person whose department sponsors this and from whose vote it's paid for, I want to assure you that whatever it is that we have to do, whatever it is that we can do in order to allow this to proceed ahead will be done. Okay. So I would assume, finality, Cancorla, Deputy Murphy, we get the interim report, have that considered at Cabinet, have it brought here, get all your advice, and then decide if it's a legislative proposition or whatever that we allow for that to happen, so that the Commission of Investigation can implement and deal with the terms of reference that were given to it by the Oireachtas in finding out those very questions, as I say, in the public interest.
Thank you. That completes leaders' questions today.